What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. Today we have Andrew Gottlieb as a special co-host for today's episode. This will also be featured on the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. And before we formally introduce Kurt Angle, Kurt, I always like to mention some favorite episodes on the podcast people should check out. There was one with, we were talking about Colt Cabana. He started the Art of Wrestling podcast back in 2010. He's also part owner in Pro Wrestling Tees. Kurt has some amazing merch there, which we'll poke around and see. Andrew, what about you? What are some favorite episodes on your show?
I would say two favorites are we interviewed presidential candidate Andrew Yang and also the president of Dr. Bronner's Magical Soap.
All right. Very cool. So this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do this in two ways. One, we are a company. There's an easy button to launch and run your podcast. We do all of the strategy, accountability, and full execution. Number two, we're an easy button for a company's corporate gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind to your clients, partners, and prospects simple and seamless and affordable. For me, Kurt, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways on how I can give to my best relationships. And for me, I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on the podcast, and also send follow-up gifts to appreciate them. Stay in touch with people in my universe. So if you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I am super excited to introduce Kurt Angle. Kurt is an Olympic gold medalist and professional wrestling icon. He's widely regarded as one of the greatest athletes in the history of sports entertainment, TNA and WWE Hall of Famer. He's earned multiple world championships and accolades throughout his career. Beyond the ring, Kurt is actually a motivational speaker, advocate for mental health and addiction recovery. In 1996, when Kurt won the Olympic gold medal, he actually did it with a broken neck. And he's broken neck several times, unfortunately. Kurt Angle's not just a sports legend, but he's really, we'll talk about a powerful example of how to overcome the toughest obstacles and emerge stronger on the other side. He has a project fundraising for USA Wrestling. You could check it out at kurtangle.org, and also has a protein powder and nutrition, Project One Nutrition. You could check it out at projectonenutrition.com. Kurt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
I wanted to start, there's so much to tackle. You did an amazing interview on Joe Rogan. People could check it out. It's like 2 hours and 40 minutes, which I listened to the whole thing. And you went into a lot there. But one of the things I thought was interesting was obviously mindset and not giving up. And there was a point where you kept losing to people. And talk about that point and the decision to go, hey, you could have given up at that point from your Olympic dream, but you didn't.
Well, it was in 1993, 1994, right after I graduated college. I won 2 NCAA championships in college, and I decided to continue on to try to make the world championship team and the Olympic team. So in 1993, I tried out for my first world team, and I lost to a couple of individuals that continuously beat me for the next couple of years. So after the 1994 season, I decided to quit. I figured there's no reason for me to continue. I'm never going to make the team, the world team or the Olympic team, so why even try? So I quit for about 5 months, but I had a really bad guilt feeling in my stomach telling me, listen, you're going to regret this if you don't at least try. See it through to the end. So I decided to come back, but I came back with a game plan. And that game plan was exhaust training. And what that entails is that's when you train till you're exhausted, and that's when the training actually begins. It's almost a form of torture. I learned it from the University of Iowa head wrestling coach, Dan Gable. He taught his wrestlers this. And I knew that because I wasn't the fastest or the biggest or the strongest or the more technical person, I knew if I could wear my opponents down and get them tired, I could score on them and win. And it actually worked because in 1995 I won the World Championships, and in 1996 I won the Olympic gold medal.
Unbelievable. And how long were you training with that method before you saw, okay, I can beat these people that I was losing to?
I would say about 8 months. 8 months of exhaust training got me prepared for the world team trials. And when I stepped in there, I won every match, and I ended up making the world team, and I ended up winning the world championships that year. So it was my first year at the world championships, and I actually won it, which is doesn't happen very often. Very few people have ever won the world championship at their first world championships.
Kurt, if we fast forward a few more years, you had some more mountains that you wanted to climb with the Steelers. I'm a fellow Yinzer. You were on the Steelers roster. Then you also went to WWE. Can you share a little bit about your motivation and the intensity you brought to climb 2 more mountains in a few more years after the Olympics?
Actually, the Steelers trial was when I quit wrestling. That was in 1990. That was in 1994. That was before the Olympics. That was the reason to get me away from wrestling. And the Steelers, what happened was there was a wrestler before me, a heavyweight wrestler named Carlton Hasselrig. He dominated the NCAAs for 3 years. And that was before I got into college. So when he graduated, he didn't play football, but the Steelers had their eye on him. He was from Johnstown, the college, which is right outside of Pittsburgh. And they saw a guy that was really fast, really quick, 300 pounds. And they were like, you know what? We're going to take a chance on this guy. We're going to draft him. They drafted him in the 8th round. Which, it's taking a chance, not that great of a chance, because, if you skip the first round, that's a big chance. But the 8th round, they picked him, and he never played football. So he ended up being an 8-time All-Pro. But he was a lineman. I tried out at a running back. So that's a skilled position, and not to say that the line isn't skilled. You have to be very skilled to play any position in football. But being at a skilled position like running back or defensive back, you have to have college experience. And unfortunately, I didn't have that. But when I tried out, I did pretty well. And they told me that, if I would have had some college experience, they would have considered bringing me on the team. But they decided against that. So the whole reason why they gave me the tryout is because of Carlton Hasselrig. If it weren't for him, I don't think they would have done that for me.
What did it mean to you to put on a Steelers uniform being a Pittsburgh kid?
that was awesome. I'm a big time Steelers fan ever since I was a little kid. Seeing the Steelers win the 70s, 4 Super Bowls, they absolutely dominated the 70s, and they were, we were considered the city of champions. The Pirates won the World Series twice. Steelers won the Super Bowl 4 times. It was a really cool time to be a Pittsburgher back then.
I want to share, Kurt, you have some great photos. I want to encourage people to check out kurtanglebrand.com to learn more here. And, obviously Dan Gable and his, methodology was influential. Talk about this picture and what's going through your mind and a little bit about your dad being an influence on you.
Well, there are a lot of emotions. Ever since I was a kid, my dream was to win an Olympic gold medal. My brothers were all wrestlers, so I knew I was eventually going to be a wrestler. But this point in time when I won the Olympic gold medal, it was difficult because I lost my dad, and before my dad passed away, I wasn't that good of an athlete. I was a bit of a crybaby. I cried a lot because I lost so much. I wasn't a very tough kid. But when my dad passed away, something inside of me just kind of erupted. I became more focused because my dad was a big sports fan, and he was our biggest fan. He went to every one of our sporting events. He never missed any event. And when he died, it really hit me hard, and I wanted to do something great for him. So I dedicated my athletic career to my father. When I did that, I started getting more focused and more determined. I started setting goals for myself. And by my senior year, I won a state championship in wrestling. Then I went on to college, won 2 NCAA championships. I went on and I won the world championships, and I won the Olympics. And you know, that was all because of my dad. And not to mention, I did break my neck right before the Olympics. So overcoming that made me very emotional too. There was a point in time where I was told I couldn't wrestle anymore. That the first doctor I went to said, "You're done. You're finished. You broke your neck. You have 2 discs sticking directly in your spinal cord. You have a badly bruised spinal cord. You have 4 broken vertebrae." He said, "You're not going to be able to wrestle anymore." And but I went and got a second opinion, and the second doctor basically said the same thing, but he also said, "When is the next round of the Olympic trials?" And I said, 6 weeks. And he said, "You know what? I might be able to get you ready by then." And I said, "Well, what's your plan?" He said, "Well, you're not going to be able to train much up until then. You'll have to let your neck rest and heal, but it won't be entirely healed by then, but it'll be healed enough that you can still wrestle." And so I ended up doing it, and it worked out extremely well. What happened was he decided to stick 12 different shots of Novocaine all throughout my neck, 5 minutes before each one of my matches. He traveled with me to the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games. And when he did that, I couldn't feel any pain in my neck. And so I was able to forget about my neck injury and wrestle. But he warned me. He said, "An hour after your matches are over, you're going to be in excruciating pain from the abuse your neck takes during those matches." He said, "Are you okay with this?" And I said, "Yes." And that's how I won the Olympic gold medal. So it was a very emotional time for me. You know, being told I wouldn't be able to wrestle anymore, dedicating it to my father, and overcoming my neck injury made me very emotional. And that's when I broke down and cried.
I'm going to let Andrew ask a question, but I just do want to point out. So my background, Kurt, is a chiropractor. And so for people listening, like the risk is not just more pain, right? We're talking being paralyzed or death, right? And that's the risks that we're talking about. So, but go ahead, Andrew.
Did you have a moment in WWE or TNA where you felt that same degree of emotion?
It's, you know what, that's a good question. Not that I know of. Yeah, you know what, there was a time, because in WWE, my third year in, I broke my neck again, and I had to have surgery again. And when I had the surgery, I came back literally 2 months later. I came back way too quickly, and my neck wasn't entirely healed, and I broke it again. And then I went and I took 6 months off and came back. My neck was healed, but it wasn't completely healed because I broke it again. So this is all in a year and a half. And so I ended up, I was in really bad shape, and I ended up getting addicted to painkillers. And that was a really tough point in my life for me, because I was taking painkillers, and the thing is, the doctors don't tell you this, but painkillers are dangerous. They're addictive, and they can kill you. And I'll explain why. When you how do I say this? Okay, you take, the doctor gives you the painkillers. You're supposed to take one every 4 to 6 hours, and so you end up building a tolerance, though. So when you're taking these pills, you're taking 4 a day, but after a while, it doesn't work anymore. Then you have to start taking more. because your body builds a tolerance. And so I had to take more, and it ended up being I was taking 8 pills a day. Then I doubled it to 16 pills. I doubled it to 32 pills. Before I knew it, I was taking 65 extra strength Vicodin a day, enough to kill a horse. It was really bad, and I was getting injured quite a bit, which didn't help with the painkiller problem. So I kept injuring my neck, and my painkiller problem kept getting worse and worse. And it got to so badly that at one point in time, I was getting ready for the biggest match of my career in WWE. It was going to be a 1-hour Ironman match against Brock Lesnar, and it was going to air on SmackDown. And I was at a house show, an untelevised show the night before. And I just got done wrestling. My brother Eric called me and said, "Hey, listen, your sister Leanne just died of a heroin overdose." And man, I was devastated. I remember going back to my hotel room, going into my room. I looked up at the ceiling, and I was just really crushed. And I threw 25 painkillers in my mouth and chewed them up and swallowed them. And I didn't wake up till 4 o'clock the next day. The WWE was trying to get a hold of me all day long, see where I was, why I didn't show up for TV for my Ironman match. But they were calling me to tell me that if I wanted to go home and plan the funeral for my sister, I could do that. I could skip the match. And I remember looking up at the ceiling again. I asked my sister Leanne, I said, "Leanne, what do you want me to do?" I was at the last leg of my career. I didn't know what to do, and all I could hear is "do it for me." So I went and wrestled, and it was the greatest match of my career. I don't know what it is, but I've always been able to overcome adversity at the craziest times, and this was no different. But I would say that's that point in time where I had that feeling again, like I did in the Olympics, and being able to have that match in remembrance of my sister was such an incredible thing to do. I wrestled with so much emotion that night, and it felt like I was wrestling in the Olympics again.
Kurt, obviously, your sister has influenced your dad, Dan Gable. Talk about the influence of Dave Schultz.
Dave was he was the greatest wrestler I've ever seen in my whole entire life. He was a multi-time world champion, Olympic gold medalist. Dave was the best technical guy I've ever seen in my life. Dave learned 7 different languages so he could learn technique from other countries, like Russia, Iran, all the best countries in the world. And Dave was my coach. He was my foxcatcher coach. And losing Dave was tough because, I lost him I believe it was 2 months before the first round of the Olympic trials and the U.S. Open. And losing him was really tough. I didn't know if I was going to be able to continue on without Dave because he had so much knowledge, and he's always been my coach. And losing him at that point in time was really tough because now I didn't have my Olympic coach. I didn't have the one that was teaching me everything. But Dave taught me enough to know what I had to do from here on in. So I was okay. And so I continued on, and I ended up winning the U.S. Open. And that's where I broke my neck, actually, the first round of the Olympic trials. And I ended up going to the Olympic trials where I would shoot my neck up with Novocaine to it. And I won the trials, and I ended up going to the Olympics. So it was I would tell you this, it was, me looking back, thinking back about it, it's a blur because everything kind of tied in together. And it was one of those highly stressful points in my life where I didn't know if I was going to make it through or not. And, I was losing sleep over it. This was my dream my whole entire life. Nothing else mattered to me. Actually, I said this after I won the Olympic gold medal. If I would have died that night, I'd have been happiest man in the world. Because I did what I set out to do, and that was winning the Olympic gold medal. But I don't want to change the story. After I won the Olympic gold medal, I didn't know what else I was going to do. Like that's all I set out to do. So the next day I was like, holy crap, what am I going to do now? I had no plan. So it was like, that's why I said if I died tonight, I'd be the happiest man in the world, because I had no other plans in my life. I had no other goals. This was it. So I went through pretty much a depression for a while, because I knew I didn't want to go back to amateur wrestling because it was too difficult. And all the neck injuries I had and all the injuries overall, it was just too much for me. I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to wrestle the Olympics again. So I was at a point in my life where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And then the WWE came around.
I know Andrew has a quick question, but can you share just the fundraising for USA Wrestling on that point? People can check it out at kurtangle.org, and what should people know about it, and what can they do to help?
Yeah, you know what? I'm now the chairman of the Winners Podium for USA Wrestling. I'm raising money for them. I'll tell you something you probably don't know. Many athletes, many countries like Russia and China, many other countries, their governments pay their Olympic athletes to train and compete full time. So their athletes don't have to get jobs. They don't have to earn a living. All they have to do is train and compete, and they're taken care of. We don't have that luxury here in the United States, because here our athletes have to get jobs for the most part. And if they're working 8 to 10 hours a day, they're only going to have enough time to train 2-3 hours tops. And that doesn't fare well for an Olympic athlete. The 2024 Olympics just ended. These athletes are already trained for the 2028 Olympics. And the new athletes coming in at the 28 Olympics will be their first Olympics. They already started training too. So I'm here early on to make sure these athletes don't have to get jobs this year or next year or the year after. For the next 3 years, I want them to focus on training and competition and nothing else. So go to kurtangle.org, go to that link and tap that link and donate whatever money you can. I promise it will come to good use. I mean, these athletes, I'll tell you this, they are, how do I say this? These athletes, well, you know what? I just want everyone to go to kurtangle.org and donate whatever money they can, because these athletes are really, they're putting everything they can into it. And the only way for them to be able to be successful is for them to have funds so they don't have to get jobs. These athletes, when I wrestled back then, I got creative about fundraising. I put on spaghetti dinner fundraisers. I sold autographed T-shirts, autographed photos. I had sponsors that stepped up for me. But these athletes today, they don't have sponsors. So the only way they're going to be able to train full time is if they get fundraising, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to fundraise for USA Wrestling.
Awesome.
So Kurt, if you couldn't tell with my background, with my WWE Championship, my awesome 316 shirt on today, being a Pittsburgh kid, I've admired you since elementary school. That's all everyone talked about. Attitude Era, fourth grade. I remember, Kurt Angle back then. And I've been doing a lot of research for this. And what's been really impressive for me is just the vulnerability and humility I hear from you. It's someone who I can tell has a lot of wisdom. And there was a moment that I would love for you to share a little bit more. What I think in hindsight was a really humbling moment for you, and want to dive a little bit deeper into why you decided to pursue this. So I might have some of these facts wrong, but from my understanding, you were offered a $1 million plus deal with WWE. You turned it down. You went into broadcasting. You didn't like it after a year, and you thought, all right, I'm going to go back to Vince and try to get that lucrative contract. And they essentially said, no, you get to start from the bottom and work your way up. Can you share a little bit more about, the humility that took to just start from the ground up?
Okay, I do want to tell you another reason why I didn't join the WWE, and I never told anybody this before. When I went up to visit Vince McMahon, he offered me a contract. It was a multi-million-dollar deal, and he put it in front of my face, and I never saw money at all, regardless, or even this. This was huge money, and I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." He doesn't even know if I'm going to be a good pro wrestler. But he took the chance, and So I said, Vince, I'm not sure I want to sign this. Can I take it home and think about it? He said, yeah, take it home and think about it. Talk to your family, see if you want to do it. If you decide to do it, sign it and send it back. So I went home and talked to my brothers. And they said, you're not doing that crap. You're the real deal. You're the real wrestler. You're Olympic gold medalist. That's fake. That's pretend. So I talked to my coaches too, and they said the same thing. You have to realize back in the 90s, amateur wrestling was taking a back seat to pro wrestling. So if someone asked me what I did for a living, I'd say I'm a wrestler. They'd say, oh, one of those wrestlers on TV. I'd be like, no, you idiot. I'm a real wrestler, an Olympic wrestler. So we were taking the back seat to pro wrestling. We were always told, don't watch it, don't affiliate with it, stay away from it. So when Vince offered me this contract, I went to my brothers and they said, you're not doing it. My coach said, you're not doing it. So I turned it down. I threw it away. But the crazy thing is when I took the sportscasting job, and I'll get back to that in a second, after I did the sportscasting, WWE came out of the closet and said, we're no longer sport, we're sports entertainment. And that meant that Vince de-illegitimized wrestling. He's basically saying wrestling's fake. It's predetermined. So my brother said, hey, he heard what Vince McMahon said. I was like, what? He said, oh, they said it's fake, so you can do it now. They admitted they're fake. So I was like, okay, I'll call the WWE. And this is after I did a stint as a broadcaster, sports broadcaster. It didn't work out very well. But I'll get back to that in a second too, because I want to continue on with Vince. So I called the WWE and I asked if that contract still stood from 1996. And Jim Ross was on the phone with me. He said, no, but you can come up and try out. And I figured nothing in my life's ever come easily. I'll go up and try out, but I'll go up and work for it. So I went up and tried out. After the first day, I picked up on everything so quickly, they offered me a contract. It was a $75,000 contract a year. Horrible, because you have to remember, as a wrestler, you travel 300 days a year, and they pay for your flights, but they don't pay for your rental car, your hotel, or your food or tolls. So 75 grand doesn't go a very long way. So I ended up signing the contract, and within 7 months of training, I ended up on TV. And it was really quick, and I wasn't ready for TV either. But Vince McMahon said, I'm going to give you an opportunity. You either sink or swim. So the first night, he wanted me to cut a promo and have a wrestling match. And we didn't have OVW or NXT back then. So we had no way of preparing for TV. So I cut one promo in Memphis when I was training down there, and it was horrible. So Vince is telling me I'm going to cut a promo in my debut. And I'm like, Vince, I suck at promos. I can't cut promos. He said, listen, I'm going to give you a chance. You either sink or swim. It's up to you. So he starts telling me the promo. He didn't write it down for me to memorize it. He said, I'm going to tell you the promo once. I want you to go out there and perform it. So he starts telling me the promo, and I'm listening. And he's going on for 3 minutes. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a long promo. And he keeps talking, and I stopped listening. I'm like, oh, my God, this is too much. So he talks for like 6 minutes, and he gets done. He says, all right, I want you to go out there and perform that promo. I said, Vince, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear a word you said. Could you repeat it? He said, I'm going to tell you one more time. You either sink or swim. It's up to you. So I went out there and I got about 80% of it right. And he said, you know what? I can work with this kid. This kid has ability. So he starts having me cut promos every week. And every week they're getting longer and longer. I'm getting better and better at them. I started mastering promos. I became one of the best in the business at cutting promos. And that's because Vince brought me out of my comfort zone. If he would have done that for me, I would have never learned how to cut promos and did what I did. So it was crazy, but I'll go back to the sportscasting job and I'll tell you what happened was when I brought my contract back home, my brother said not to do it. I went to my agent. And I asked him as well. I said, do you think I should do that? And he was a former amateur wrestler. So he said, no, you're not doing that crap. I'll get you a job. It'll be a sportscasting job. So he got me a sportscasting job for Fox in Pittsburgh. And it was a startup station, so I didn't train for it. I never got in a studio and learned how to read from a teleprompter and read from my notes, my script. So my first night on the air, I was going to anchor the sports. I was the weekend sports anchor. And so I run into the studio. I have my scripts in my hand. They're all in order. And I run in and I run into the producer, and the scripts go up in the air and they fly all over the place. So I'm picking them up and they're all out of order. And the producer says, "Get to the desk, hurry up. We're going to start the angle on sports." That's what they called it, the angle on sports. So I get behind the desk and I look up and I'm looking at the teleprompter, and I have an earpiece in my ear so my producer could talk to me. And it says, "Time for the angle on sports." And I look up and my teleprompter goes blank. So I'm not saying anything. I'm waiting for the teleprompter, and there's nothing on it. So I'm waiting for like 30, 40 seconds. My producer says, "Kurt, say something, say anything. You got to say something." And I was like, I remember that the first one was about the Steelers. I said, "The Steelers had a game today. Let's go to the highlights." So I go to the highlights, and I don't know the players' names. So I'm like, "There's number 63 with a tackle, and here's the quarterback throwing the pass to the receiver for the touchdown." So then I ended up, because my scripts were out of order, I didn't know what the next story was. So I had to guess. And I was like, and now next is baseball. And it ends up being golf. And this happens for the whole 8 minutes. I'm guessing the wrong story each time a new story pops up. After 8 minutes, my scripts are everywhere. My two co-anchors are next to me. We all look like we just had sex because we looked exhausted. We're looking through the scripts, trying to get the right scripts. It was the longest session, 8-minute session I've ever been a part of. And it was a disaster. And that was my first night on the air. And that's how my sportscasting job literally ended. I mean, it never got better. So it was the worst experience of my life, and I couldn't wait to leave. So as you can imagine, I couldn't wait to get to the WWE.
You were no Bob Pompiani starting
No,
off.
I wasn't even close to Bob. Yeah. You know what? I used to see him at events, and he would help me out. He would hey, do this and do that. And act more comfortable in front of the camera, say this, say that. So I always had Andrew Stocky and Bob Pompiani, the guys that I was competing against. They were always helping me out. They were trying to make me a better person or a better sportscaster.
Heard. So there's a New Jersey police officer, Daniel Novoa, who had a question. It's one of our team members' husbands who's huge fan of yours. So I said you'd be coming on, and he, along those lines of what you were talking about, he wanted to know, obviously, you're one of the few people who did it all from the technical wrestling and the entertainment side.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to know how you honed the entertainment factor, right? What were some of the things you did? Because like you said, in the beginning, you're like, I couldn't cut a promo, and we were talking about is like even 30 people with 30 or 40 years experience who can't cut a great promo. So what did you do to hone that entertainment factor?
You know what? It was something that Vince McMahon said to me. And, because I made an ass on myself quite a bit. I became like the butt of a joke. And I did a lot of comedy in WWE. And the reason why I was able to do that is because not a lot of other wrestlers were willing to put themselves out there like that. Because if you take the comedy approach, fans aren't going to take you seriously as a wrestler. But what Vince McMahon told me was, listen, you're an Olympic gold medalist. Everybody in the world knows you're a badass. So you can make an ass out of yourself all you want. It's not going to matter. Because when you go out there and wrestle, they're going to take you seriously. So when I heard that, I was like, you know what? I'll relax a little bit. I'll let I'll let my personality come out. Show a lot of charisma, be funnier. And I took like the dope approach, like the airheaded approach to it, the gullible approach, where I was doing vignettes with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon, and we really did some funny skits, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And the reason why we even started doing it is because Stone Cold Steve Austin and myself, we were both injured. I broke my tailbone and Stone Cold Steve Austin hurt his back at a pay-per-view. And we were the two top guys in the business at the time. And Vince McMahon didn't want us to sit at home. So he said, you know what? I'm going to have these guys do some comedy bits so that we can keep them on TV. So we were doing the comedy bits, and they were hilarious. I mean, and so because Vince McMahon told me that, you know, I was a badass in real life, that it wouldn't matter how funny I was, that fans would still take me seriously, I was able to let myself go and do some, you know, really, comedic stuff. And so because of that, it made it easier on me. But there was a certain point in time where Vince was like, "Listen, now you're too comical. We need to change your character to the wrestling machine." So that's when I made that transition from comedy to serious. And so Vince had me do all different facets, and I think because of that, it made me look like I was the most well-versed wrestler. One of them in history. I could do comedy, I could do seriousness, drama, I could do whatever. So I became really well versed at everything. And I think that Vince made me a better sports entertainer because of it.
This is definitely one of my favorites on your photo page right here.
Yeah, the milk truck. That was my favorite moment. I was so excited that night because, like 3 or 4 years before this, Stone Cold Steve Austin came out with a beer truck and sprayed down Vince McMahon with beer. And that night, 4 years later, I got to bring a milk truck out and spray Stone Cold Steve Austin down with beer or with milk. And it was the greatest moment of my wrestling career. I absolutely love that moment.
Love this.
Right there. It was in Sacramento, California. That milk truck is from the 1950s, and it was such a great moment for me.
You can't even see your face. It's amazing.
Hey, I'll tell you a quick story. You guys are gonna love this. So I'm wearing those clothes, right? Well, I had a red eye that night, and this show it ended up going off air 2 hours before my red eye, so I didn't have the chance to change. I had to wear those clothes to the airport.
The person sitting next to
you. And 2 hours into the plane trip, the whole plane starts smelling like sour milk. And people are like, "Who the hell stinks like that?" And I'm like, "Oh my God," I put my hands over my face. It was so bad. I smelled like spoiled milk the whole trip home.
Kurt, speaking of a serious moment, and I want to make sure as well, my best man for my wedding had a question. So serious moment, when you debuted in TNA and you headbutted Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
That was in 2006. To this day, I still watch that video when I'm trying to get jacked up for meetings and I need to get into a zone. I just watch you do that. It's just an amazing moment. So thank you for that, almost 20 years later. And I have to make sure, best man for my wedding, Dan Schimmel. We started watching professional wrestling, 4th grade. He came to WrestleMania with me for my bachelor party. Pittsburgh kid as well. He wanted to know, how did Pittsburgh make you a better man and a father?
Oh, God. Pittsburgh is growing up in Pittsburgh, everybody was into sports, because we were the city of champions. My dad was into sports. He played football. All my brothers played football and wrestled. Being from Pittsburgh, you had a certain pride about you. And, we weren't just the city of champions. We were also a labor city. So we were a blue collar town, and we took a lot of pride in that too. And so if you were from Pittsburgh, you were considered a tough guy, a badass. And that's how we carried ourselves. And, my brothers, I'm not going to lie to you, they got in a lot of trouble as kids. They got in a lot of fights, and, they gave my parents, they gave them a lot of stress. And, even my brother Mark, at one point in time, he was only in 8th grade, and he was getting in so many fights that he ended up being thrown into juvenile delinquent center for 2 years. And he actually beat up 2 cops. He was only in 8th grade.
Wow.
He was a real badass. And that's what when people think of Pittsburgh, they think of tough guys. They think of great athletes, the city of champions, the labor city, blue collar city. So I take a lot of pride in that. I was never a blue collar worker, but I trained like it. And that's where I got my work ethic from, is from my dad, my brothers. So Pittsburgh is known for being very high on work ethic.
Kurt, I'd love to hear, I know we have a few more minutes, just some of the wrestlers you admire and what you learned from them, from Brock Lesnar to The Rock. Just name a few and maybe a lesson you learned.
You know what? I learned a lot from The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, Undertaker. These guys were the ones that were carrying me through my matches. I'll tell you this, my rookie year. Now, granted, I only trained for 7 months before I started on TV. So I wasn't ready. And I'll tell you why I wasn't ready. I could barely structure a 6-minute match at this point in time in my career. And I barely knew psychology. Do you guys know what psychology is in wrestling?
I do.
Okay, I'll explain it to you in an easy detail. It's good guy versus bad guy. Good guy out wrestles the bad guy. The bad guy cheats and gets the good guy down for the heat. The good guy makes a comeback. The bad guy either cheats and wins, or the good guy overcomes the cheating and wins. So that's psychology. And I barely knew that at this point in my career. So what my opponents had to do for me is structure the whole entire match before the match started. And then they had to call the whole entire match in the ring so I wouldn't forget any spots. And I did this for about a year. Even when I beat The Rock for the World Championship 10 months into my rookie year, he structured the match for me and called the whole entire match in the ring so I wouldn't forget any spots. And I did this for about a year. But I became such a good listener and a good follower that I then became a good leader. And I started structuring the matches, and I started leading the matches. And within 2 years in the business, because of guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, The Rock, Undertaker, them teaching me, I became the best in the business. 2 years into the business, just 2 years, and I was considered the best in the business because these guys showed me the ropes. They cared enough about me. And you have to remember, wrestling's about yourself. It's not about sharing with others. But they did that for me because they liked me. Because I was humble. I had humility. I showed them respect. I didn't walk in there saying, hey, I'm an Olympic gold medalist. I'm better than everybody else here. I let them know I'm at their level. And, and it didn't matter whether I won or lost. As long as we put on the best possible product, that's all I cared about. And they knew that. And because of that, they liked me. I'll tell you something about the business. If you don't get along with the boys and the girls in the locker room, you're not going to have a very long business. You're not going to have a very long career. It's just not going to happen. So you have to get along with everybody. If you don't, then your career is going to be relatively short.
Kurt, I just want to be the first one. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your lessons, and everyone can check out fundraising for USA Wrestling, kurtangle.org. Check out Project One Nutrition, and you can check out his website, kurtanglebrand.com, which we've been on if you've been watching the video. Kurt, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I had a lot of fun today. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, man.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.